welcome Dr. Martينا موستين. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. She'll be giving us more about, she'll be talking about entrepreneurship and international business. We're very excited to learn more about this aspect, and she's a faculty from the University of Kansas, San Diego State. So, please, Dr. Martينا.
Thank you again for the warm introduction. It's a true pleasure to be here, a true honor to be here. This is my first time in Saudi Arabia, and how lucky am I to come to the best university and give my talk. And how lucky I am also to be here and to see the amazing transformation and the energy, entrepreneurial energy that just seems to be happening everywhere. Yesterday I had a chance to be at the global biotech startup in Dammam, and again I was so impressed and truly my heart is just warmed up to see all the new ideas coming from this part of the world, and so again thank you. And so I was told that to have a paint maybe a broad picture here of my research and just generally the research in our university, which is San Diego State University. Maybe a little bit about me in terms of my research endeavors, or the hats, proverbial hats that I'm wearing at our institution. So I guess the most important is my position as a endowed chair, Charles Hostel Professor of Global Business in my home in the Fowler of College Businesses and Management Department. I also serve as a faculty director of our Wendy Gillespie Center for Advancing Global Business, sorry about both research there, global business. That is a center that was just recently named. It's something that I'll be talking about later. We are very proud of it. It has been around for more than 30 years. And it's one of the national centers of excellence in the United States. There are only 15 centers like that around the United States. I also serve and have been now, I cannot believe it, I think it's 7 years now or so, serving as a senior editor for the journal World Business, which is ranked as number 2 in the area of international business. Something I'm very passionate about is serving as the editor-in-chief of IEScholars.net. IEScholars stands for International Entrepreneurship Scholars. And it is a really grassroots community of scholars, mainly faculty, but also doctoral students, some practitioners. We have at this point over 800 members from 70 different countries. And the mission of this grassroots community is to distribute or disseminate best practices both in research and pedagogy on international entrepreneurship, and really create this community that we tend to meet in different conferences and keep energizing the stream within entrepreneurship, specifically international entrepreneurship. I was just invited to become a member of the editorial review board of the Journal of International Business Studies, which is obviously the #1 journal in the area of international business. And almost at the same time, I was offered to co-chair the track on international processes and international entrepreneurship at the next Academy of International Business, which will take place next June in Warsaw, Poland. So just maybe a little bit about our university. We think of our university as as very big, but now in comparison to your university, obviously we are far smaller. Our tradition goes back to 1897, so by American standards. By the way, I come from Europe, so by American standards, this is pretty old. We are the largest public university at the San Diego metropolitan area. San Diego, many of you are aware of it. It's actually a pretty sizable place. It's the 8th largest metropolitan area in the United States, so not that shabby on that side. In terms of the numbers, we are about half of yours, 35,000 students. We have 3 campuses, the main one obviously in San Diego. We have one in Imperial Valley, Imperial County, which is essentially more east of San Diego, a very rural area, but it's an up and coming area for renewable energies and also smart agriculture. And we have one very small campus in the Republic of Georgia as well, which is mainly focused on engineering. We are very proud in terms of our research activities, and much of it is measured in dollars in this case. So last year was our record in terms of raising money for research, almost $150 million. And one, because I am again housed in the College of Business, so a few years ago we had a really transformational gift. It was really the first time in the history of our university where a college was named Fowler. So it was in honor of Alexis and Ron Fowler, who were entrepreneurs, made a lot of wealth in distribution business, also co-owners of the San Diego Padres baseball team. And so that was up to $50 million that was part of it was aimed at stimulating research and also international collaboration, by the way. We have, I think here, I forgot the exact number, how many colleges you have here in KSU. We have only 5 key ones. We have additional ones, but not 5, 7. Obviously, business is the largest one. Engineering, sciences, arts and letters, education, professional studies, as we call PSFA, and fine arts, and health and human services. So those are, we don't have medical college, that's not in our charter. And so that's UC as the University of California, San Diego, which is the other smaller university, which is mainly focusing on medical. Some of the new research endeavors that we are very excited about, again, it's, I've been hearing earlier today about some of the new endeavors here and then strategic priorities and new initiatives. So in terms of research, we are, our #1 objective is to become R1 institution, which by the Carnegie classification is the top research university. We are getting very close. The main issue has been the fact that our charter as a university does not allow us to have standalone PhD programs. And so we always have to look for partners in terms of our PhD initiatives. And this is changing. It looks like this may actually, that particular clause may go away. And so we may be able to establish more PhD programs on our own. And then the next initiative that's truly transformational for the university and frankly for the city of San Diego is our Mission Valley campus. So in San Diego there is in a very central, very lucrative part of the city that has not been developed thus far, which has been a site of a stadium that was for the football team for San Diego Chargers. And that has, through election, actually was given to San Diego State University to develop. And so we are planning to really double in size. One of the #1 things was to build a new stadium, which you see right there. It's called now Snapdragon Stadium. So it was the Snapdragon, obviously, is a product of Qualcomm, which is one of the largest companies headquartered in San Diego, chip developer for all the wireless. Besides the stadium, which is now the first thing that was completed, we are building a 1.6 million square meter innovation district. So that is going to be structured mainly as a public-private partnership. We already had the first one announced, but most of it is still it's still sort of being conceptualized. Lots of new opportunities, obviously, for the university, but for business and entrepreneurship to play an active role. I know this is an entrepreneurship institute here. I should probably talk about our similar institution, although I'm just hearing that the roles seem to be a little bit different. So we, at our Culture of Business, we have a Lavin Entrepreneurship Center that is housed within the business school, although finances, they are separate. It has been also named Lavin. Was one entrepreneur who provided a good gift for the center to be sustainable into the future. The Entrepreneurship Center is influencing our entrepreneurship program, which has been just ranked number 30, I think, in the United States among all the colleges, and I think number 20 or so among public institutions, which is what we are. So again, these entrepreneurship centers will probably have presence in the Innovation District in this new initiative. Again, besides just that, it's transformational sort of for the city of San Diego, because there will be development, residential, hotel, retail space, and also large area for green and parks, which is very important. If you've been in California, it's a very, very important aspect. In terms of the research in the Father of College Business, so for us, not unlike most U.S. universities, the funding is, or the research is primarily driven through faculty and internal grants. So the idea of external grants, where faculty go out and they apply for money to support a research outside, it's still rather uncommon. Increasingly, the roles of centers and institutes play a role. And so I've already told you about the Wendy Gillespie Center for Advancing Global Business. This was originally named CYBER, so Center for International Business Education and Research. And again, just to tell you how prestigious this one is that this is renewed every 4 years through very highly competitive grants from the US Department of Education. Just to give you an idea, UCLA, most of you know UCLA was one of the centers that used to have a center, but did not get that. We did in California, so just a little bit of telling you again how proud we are to have it now for the past 30 years. And we have renamed it specifically because being funded through federal government gives us, there are some strings attached in terms of what we can do. Primarily, all of the research, pedagogy, outreach activities, which are sort of the 3 pillars of the center, they have to aim at US students, US institutions, but with renaming and really having this umbrella center, now we can expand it. We can really do international stuff, invite international faculty to come to us, so it really makes our hands freer in that sense. We just got the grant in June, one of the 4-year grants, so we are feeling good that for the next 4 years again we have the funding. And as I mentioned, we also just had a significant naming gift from Wendy Gillespie. She's a very wealthy lady, entrepreneur in heart, really international entrepreneur actually. She and her late husband developed a distribution business mainly in Mexico through consumer products, and so she gave us a significant donation again for the center to be more sustainable and have more funds for various projects. Research productivity, I don't know if this is the same situation here, but it's extremely important for us, primarily for accreditation purposes. So our school has been accredited for the past several decades through the ASCSB, the Association of Advanced Collegiate School of Business. It's of course very, very important for our faculty, if not the most important, for tenure and promotion decisions. And we just had this conversation in the provost office. It's very important also for teaching loans. So in our sort of practice is that as we hire assistant professors, those are usually shielded from teaching initially for about 5 years, where they have reduced teaching loads so that they can focus on research. that once they are tenured, they become associate professors, their teaching load goes up somewhat. But as long as you are research active, you can really show that your productivity is not going down. So even full professors like me still, enjoy reduced teaching loads over their career. How do we measure research productivity? That's always a question, right? So there's this balance, obviously, quantity, quality. As I have been in San Diego State now for almost 17 years, and so there have been this ongoing conversation and really evolution of how do we assess the research productivity. It used to be very subjective. Really, faculty could have made a case for particular journals and then the impact factors, right? And our as we assess, particularly for tenure decisions and promotion decisions, we take sort of portfolio approach. So I know some universities, they want their faculty to hit top, say 5 A-star journals. We also not push the faculty now this way, particularly with the strategic priority being the R1 institution, but still, we recognize that the top journals don't always actually publish the most interesting things, or the practitioner journals and maybe some lower quality journals can be very important too, particularly if faculty is sort of a more niche oriented. And so this portfolio approach, we like to see all. We like to see sort of publications across the spectrum. More recently, I would say past 5 years or so, we have actually instituted the AJG or ABS, the Chartered Association of Business Schools list of journals. Are you familiar with it? Same one. So this has been this seems to be really a movement sort of across the United States. It has a list of journals that are essentially ranked according multiple criteria. One of them impact factor, assessment from different universities, and so on and so forth. And so this one is really becoming very, very important in really more objectively measure productivity and quality of our faculty research. For tenure decision, they can still use impact factors and sort of make individual cases, particularly for some journals that are not on the list. And increasingly, we are also considering acquisition of external grants as a part of measure or component of measuring research productivity. This is mainly in the area of management information systems, and that's kind of the only really. Oh, and of course the Wendy Gillespie Center for Advancing Business. So that's sort of the bright spots where most of the funding is coming externally for faculty. So this is just for research in international business. The top journals, that's how they are ranked. This is the most recent one, so 4 stars is of course the best one, 4, and then it kind of goes down. And so we have a very sophisticated formula actually that every faculty has to sort of submit for the evaluation in terms of the numbers and also number of co-authors and everything that goes into this. So this is in international business, in entrepreneurship. I think it's most relevant for you. So this is the list there, ETP and Journal Business Ventures listed, as well as SCJ being the top there. So a little bit about me in my research. So my passion, my really interest lies in that cross section between entrepreneurship and international business. So increasingly, I have been also looking at business development, which seems to be sort of running somewhat similarly or concurrently with international entrepreneurship. The idea of recognizing and pursuing and developing international business opportunities that has been sort of interest of mine for really ever.
More recently, I have been really intrigued by how also environment affects the process, and specifically, obviously institutions, but the technological and spatial environment. So how, the location of entrepreneurs, not just on the country level, but on the sort of sub-regional and even urban level, how that may impact the ability to recognize opportunities and ultimately the ability to pursue opportunities. Methodology-wise, I have also been kind of in all three areas, and I will show you just my recent publications that they really go across this idea again of portfolio, diversity there, both qualitative and quantitative studies, as well as conceptual papers that I have sort of dealt with. And collaborations, I think for me, what drives me as a researcher is obviously the research question, the idea of finding new knowledge, but it's also working with people, enjoying to work with people on a project. That to me is as important. That's kind of the engine and the energy that I get from it. So obviously my collaborations, I've done lots of work with my own colleagues, but internationally as well. After I got tenure and then I was sort of more free to choose what I want to do, I really made some effort to also reach out across disciplines. I don't know if this is the case here as well, but one of the challenges that we deal with in terms of the research is, it should be more cross-disciplinary. Everybody agrees that when disciplines collaborate, engineering, entrepreneurship, right, geography and business, that has the potential to really come up with something unique and valuable, but it's difficult. It's difficult to do. Again, I don't know if it's the case here. It's like I have fantastic conversations with people from other departments, but then when it comes to research, it's almost like we speak different languages. But I have tried, and I'll show you some of my efforts, recent efforts in that sense as well. And I like to work really with people who are very senior, well-known authors, as well as junior and students. And in fact, that is one of the also priorities in university. We encourage faculty to work with students as well. So I just thought I would maybe go over my four most recent publications. They were sort of published across a spectrum. Obviously, probably the best one in terms of rankings is the Journal of Business, but they are all ABS 3 or above. The first one, I was talking about qualitative. So the first one is a qualitative study that I did with Mustafa from Sheffield University, Mustafa Aksan, which is also San Diego State, and Abrar Sayed, who's in Turkey. Here we looked, it was a longitudinal and a qualitative, where it mainly interview-based research. We essentially were intrigued by what is happening, the impact of this COVID crisis on the global value chain, and specifically we were interested in the Bangladeshi sort of export-oriented garment industry. And so we were able to kind of be a little bit opportunistic because it really demanded to react very quickly. We were able to interview 7 of the founders of these companies, or top executives, right when the COVID crisis started, and then interview them again, when it started to wane away, and really had quite a bit of archival information there as well, and information from some of the key government associations that are supporting the industry. And so we were trying to really tease out how that value chain has differed, particularly with sort of the power relations between the garment manufacturers, who of course were sort of squeezed in the middle, right? So those garment manufacturers, they mainly were sourcing their materials from China, but they had a very powerful customers, the big brands, Zara and Disney and Calvin Klein in Europe, primarily in Europe. And so we again looked at it, that's what I have been sort of intrigued with, through sort of 3 dimensions, right? Temporal, so what happens sort of, in terms of the aspects of time in the global value chain. And, we saw on one hand, there has been these delays, right, in deliveries, there have been canceled orders, and then at the same time there was this compression for them to act and really pushing them to look for other opportunities abroad, which again, that's something that's very dear to my heart. There have been quite a few new relationships, and I think yesterday we had this conversation with one of the people on the jury. Innovation, is necessity the mother of innovation? Is it when you are actually, when you're faced with challenges, is this when you're pushed to innovate? Or is it when you have resources? Is it when you have the slack, right? You have enough to sort of play around, experiment. And so in this case, the finding is more yes. I mean, they were really pushed, and it's interesting, right? It's not that they were just looking for new markets, but many of these export companies that have really been just taking orders, right? From these big customers, they really started to innovate, particularly in terms of the antibacterial fabric and also using more platforms to place their products and to really explain to potential new customers, do demos and so on and so forth. So that was very interesting, and spatially as well. And definitely there has been far broader sort of distribution in terms of their, sourcing the materials, not surprisingly away from China. So partially that was the push to their customers, not only politically more sensitive, but with COVID, the COVID lockdowns there. So they were really pushed to sort of look outside. Lots of localization. In that sense, really, actually, the Bangladeshi garment manufacturers gained quite a bit because they now, at this point, were able to really shift and shift from not only Chinese because of the sort of political things, but one thing that they got more freedom from their customers, from the big brands. Before COVID, there was this practice of nominated suppliers, so they only could source from what their main customers tell them, and it was usually Chinese. But after the COVID, where again these big customers found themselves with canceled orders, they basically, hey, you go and you just find anybody as long as it passes the quality. And so in that sense, the manufacturers really gained far more power. And so what we have seen, is obviously this paradox, both in this push of disruption of the global value chain, but at the same time, in some sense, we saw more tightening, at least domestically. Again, we found these companies to be really in a more powerful position in terms of their position of the value chain and developing new capabilities. The next paper that was also published last year with my colleagues, Dante De Gregorio is from the California State University in Monterey Bay, and Doug Thomas from New Mexico, University of New Mexico. This was a kind of a classic quantitative piece where we had data on 130 plus manufacturing, small, medium-sized enterprises, we got about close to 100 of them. And we essentially wanted to know, there is lots of literature, right, that looks at, okay, how do, what helps, what facilitates, again, recognition of opportunities, international opportunities, IPO, international business opportunities. But we wanted to sort of disentangle a little bit, not just, okay, international business opportunity. If you go to entrepreneurship literature, right, it's several intertwined processes. It's the recognition piece, it's the assessment piece, and it's then development or exploitation, right, exploitation. And so we really wanted to know how the three aspects that have been looked at before, do they really differ between these two processes? And so we looked at social capital, right? So social networks, the size of the social network of these companies, but also range. So the degree to which they have international contacts, either directly to direct international companies or through US-based companies that have international contacts abroad. We looked at the degree to which we hypothesized, by the way, that both should sort of make sense. But we found, for example, that for development, it seems the size of the network really just matters for the recognition, and it makes sense, right? It's just really about the exposure that you have, but just knowing someone, having a lot of people that you know abroad, it doesn't really help you to exploit the opportunity that much, right? It's more about you have access to information that you can make sense as an entrepreneur. But then having actual somebody, abroad specifically, now that is helpful. That is helpful to both, right? It's not just the exposure, but it's also the idea that they help you exploit those opportunities. International experience, here, we were actually hypothesizing that the capability, right? If you have experience working abroad as a resource pool firm, as an entrepreneur firm, right? It helps you going forward, right? It helps you, okay, this is how we signed a distributed contract in country X. You have at least some of that experience is going to be helpful and transferable to other opportunities. And so, we found partial support, but actually, in some cases, we were surprised that it was helpful for recognition as well. So it seems that the mechanism is that once you sort of gain the knowledge in one market, it sort of makes you more alert, perhaps, to opportunities, similar opportunities in other markets. And then, again, I'm speaking here to folks that are very familiar with this idea of entrepreneurial orientation, so proactive mindset, which we measured by the typical, Lumpkin measure that sort of looks at proactive risk-taking and so on and so forth. And we also looked at technologically proactive, so number of patents and how old the firm was. And again, we found that actually both are kind of important for both the development as well as recognition of international business opportunities. Any questions, by the way? I don't want to just finish. Okay. This paper was really fun to do. So this one was published just again last year in International Business Review with my colleague Mustafa Ahsan from San Diego State. That's kind of the example how one really enjoys the process, right? With, brainstorming and conceptual. So this is a conceptual paper, theoretical paper. And Mustafa, who comes really from sort of core entrepreneurship, I'm more on the international side. So we looked at how does this new crowdfunding platforms, is there something about them, how they are likely to impact international entrepreneurship going forward? And all familiar with crowdfunding, and mainly we think about, okay, this is a tool for raising money, right? Whether it's reward or equity. But drawing sort of more on the new digital entrepreneurship literature, we sort of expanded it and started to think about, hey, it's like a new world, right? And as a new world, this digital world, it has also three dimensions. There is this dimension of time, which in crowdfunding context is very specific, right? As an entrepreneur, it's not like you're raising money from VCs and you can do it for years. You have a specific window, right? You have the start of the campaign, you have the end of the campaign, and whatever you do within those 2 months, it has impact on how you work, right? And this literature says, you better engage your, you better engage your backers, otherwise you're not going to be able to raise money. So the temporal aspect, the temporal dimension of this new world is a little different. It's for sure, it's compressed. Then there is the structural dimension, right? So in the world, in a non-digital world, you are meeting with sort of anybody, right? And you know that is both advantage as well as disadvantage. But in the crowdfunding platforms, it can really depend, right? What crowdfunding platform you are going to be in. Some crowdfunding platforms are very homogeneous, right? It's sort of the backers tend to be all consumers and so on and so forth. Other ones, and we here also conceptually sort of distinguish. Look, we cannot make all crowdfunding platforms be the same. We have to start to look at crowdfunding platforms, how they differ on these dimensions, right? And so, structurally, what we conceptualize there is, okay, what is the diversity? What is the also specialization of the backers? Because, some of the literature on open innovation looks at that, these platforms are not only a mechanism to raise money, but it's also to search for new information, for new knowledge, right? So there are companies there that they're completely fine. We have some actually case studies, some examples that very known companies that said, hey, yeah, we didn't raise any money, but we got such valuable information from the potential customers, how we should adapt the product and how we should distribute them and so on and so forth. So structural dimension is also important to look at. And then the spatial dimension, that to me again is absolutely fascinating, right? Suddenly you have entrepreneurs who can be exposed to people from around the world, right? We know that, for example, VCs have a very strong location bias. They like to invest in a place where they are, they can come and visit you and so on and so forth. This is very different, right? Here you have potentially, and there is anecdotal evidence, they didn't measure this yet, right? This is a conceptual piece, but you have suddenly, the whole globe is potentially at your fingertips, right? The crowdfunding really represents a very important, marketplace of ideas, and that obviously should impact how opportunities are spawned and how they emerge. And so we have a series of propositions here that essentially say that all three those intertwined processes, the recognition of opportunities is going to be impacted. We should be seeing far more in this context, particularly if the structural and the spatial dimensions is higher on these crowdfunding platforms. Evaluation, also the process of evaluation is, by the way, is quite under-researched area in entrepreneurship. How do entrepreneurs really assess, evaluate opportunities? This is changing, right? This again, it's this idea of co-evaluating actually opportunities, right, with the backers. And we have several sort of examples in the study where we show that it's the entrepreneur really teasing out the assessment sort of information from their backers as they go, and as they do that, they are actually sometimes even pivoting already and adapting their product. So the whole idea of creation, innovation is really it's speeded up, it's accelerated, and the backers are really far more part of the process on a far more global level. And then exploitation is, we expect that to be changed as well. This sort of evolving differently as well. Again, it's this idea that for exploitation you need ideas how to structure a business model, right? Internationally in particular. Where am I going to source? Where am I going to manufacture? Who am I going to use maybe to promote my products, right? And in the crowdfunding platforms, particularly the ones that have very broad global reach and very specialized, the participants, those backers, this is becoming far easier and far more refined globally, right? So the process of global innovation, we expect to be an exploitation of those international business opportunities. We expect to be different. The last one that I would like to feature here, I hope I'm not going on too long, just going here and there, is again, this one is different, right? So qualitative, quantitative, theoretical. This piece is a review of literature. And remember, I was mentioning this desire to be more cross-disciplinary. So in this case, my colleagues, Dvana Chakrabarti Mushtaba from San Diego State and Anthony Gerson from Queen's University in Canada, we looked at the concept of global city. Right? Global city is becoming very hot in the area of international business. Why? Because there is this recognition that most of the research, international research, has been done on the level of country. So when we measure, when we look at different countries, you know, where companies go, we look at the country level. So what's the index of, I don't know, enforcement of legal rights, right? What's the political system, and so on and so forth. But now the recognition is, hey, this is not all homogeneous. It's not all the same across the countries. There are significant differences between cities, particular urban areas. In the United States, for example, you have even competition between cities. Who is going to attract the next Amazon headquarters, right? What kind of incentives are we going to give to companies as they come in? Just the policies may differ widely. Immigration, for example, LA, California, very different than say, DC, right? So it's very different. And so we have reviewed literature across international business where it starts to sort of really emerge, but also geography and urban studies, where this idea of global city really came from, and where the literature has been far more prevalent. And so we came up with this framework, obviously seeking to find and synthesize what we already know and what sort of research needs to know going forward. And you know what? Can I? There's a video actually that we have. Can I maybe do the video?
Which, by the way, is also one of the experiments that we try to now, do our abstracts, so visual abstracts of our papers. This is a link, right? Oh, no. Can I just copy and paste? Because the link doesn't seem to work. That would be here. And then you can here. How's it? Yeah, so essentially, first of all, there's a little bit confusion in terms of what is global city. We had some conversation about Riyadh, really seeking to be global city, very competitive, right? And it's common occurrence. I know London, the mayor of London is going out and promoting the city, right? It's not the UK, it's about the city. City, come to us, this is a financial center, and so forth. So, from the IB, international business or business scholar perspective, what is a global city? Right? So there are really three things. One is the presence of advanced producer services. So I think we were talking about yesterday about Aramco moving to Riyadh, right? The idea here is, okay, so we're going to have this extremely prominent company coming here, but with the company
probably will also come, the supporting companies. So, prominent law firms, right? That they work with, marketing agencies, and so on and so forth. So, it's this presence of supporting business services against advanced, which typically businesses need as they, as they operate, as they enter a different country. So again, law firms, marketing agencies, as I was talking about, big consulting companies, and so on and so forth. So there's a measure, and there are several measures of global city index. I think MasterCard has one. Then there's of course academically derived ranking of this global city network, which is out there as well. And so this presence of the APS, the Advanced Production Services, is very important. The next one is connectivity. And so, cities differ quite a bit on how connected they are. So San Diego, for example, obviously connected through digitally, but also it has an international airport and it has a port as well. So as that component sort of gives it more potential to be a true global city. By the way, 45% of world FDI, world foreign direct investment, has gone to about 15 global cities, which is immense, right? So there are just a few places in the world that are like that. And by the way, one should not confuse global cities and mega cities, right? There's a difference. So a city that can have 50 million people may not be a global city. And precisely it's because do they have those APS, do they have those advanced producer services? And secondly, how connected they are. Again, there are different measures, the digital connectivity, infrastructure connectivity. And really one can also, there's some really sophisticated measures that look at number of flights, between other key cities and so on and so forth. And then the third one is cosmopolitanism. So there's something about the culture in global cities that attracts people from around the world. And frankly, it also makes it more, it sort of reduces the liability of foreigners for international company coming in. It's, I'm sure you have experienced this phenomenon. When you come to a global city, you can count on certain things to be there, right? Certain level of quality, of convenience, and again, many expats typically, right? And so the culture that develops in global cities sort of not only facilitates business, but it also attracts more talent. If you are a manager for a large company, you're probably likely to be and have to go on an international assignment. You probably prefer to go another global city than sort of a second tier city. And so again, in the conceptual piece, we sort of really work out theoretically all of the mechanisms how global cities are likely to impact foreign direct investment, and and also come out with several directions sort of for future research, which I find again very interesting. For me, what I would be interested in is to see how, again, location, specifically for entrepreneurs, how does location give advantage in terms of seeing international business opportunities. Okay, I have only 2 more slides, so maybe we can then have more of a conversation. Some of the trends and challenges, at least as we see it from our institution, in our part of the world, one of the trends that I have seen, at least as an editor, which is a very positive trend, is greater focus on understudied regions. So Middle East, for example, is getting far more attention, sort of in the top journals. Latin Americans and so forth as well. Access data is always a challenge for everyone. So I don't know about how it is here, but for us, one has to be sort of opportunistic in some sense, right? The data opportunity comes in, let's look at it. This one is, I struggle myself, actually, sort of grappling with it philosophically. I published papers, but, and in some really good journals, but how relevant is it really to the practitioners? And I think both the AACSP, the accrediting body, is starting to notice it, starting to push really universities to stimulate research that would be far more practitioner-oriented, that practitioners would actually read. At this point, much of what we do, and I'm just gonna say a little about how you feel about it. But lots of these, top articles are kind of for ourselves, which is sad, right? And so me, even as an editor, and I had a discussion with our editor-in-chief, Ajay Kaur, in our journal, and that's kind of our journal, Journal World Business. We sort of pride ourselves that rigor, of course, there has to be rigor. So methodologically, if we accept paper, it should be well done. But we all know there's no study that's perfect. There's always limitations and weaknesses. So we would rather sometimes, acknowledge the weaknesses, but accept a paper that would be one phenomenon based, and just really have a relevant question. So I forgot who said it, but this entrepreneur orientation. There's so many papers on entrepreneur orientation, right? Where after a point, it's like, okay, do we really need to know another, kind of study that what is the modern, what does it need? Yeah. So this is, I think, this trade-off of rigor and relevance, I think, is going to be a challenge, and I think we're going to see more and more from accredited bodies as well to push researchers to be just simply more relevant. Something that we are thinking about is in our center, that is sort of new, and I would love to have your opinions on that, is sending out researchers more into the field. So is there a mechanism how we could institutionalize sort of having, giving researchers maybe over the summer to actually go in a company and be in that company for an extended period of time to really sort of create that connection, outside of the academic walls, so that research is becoming more relevant. Multidisciplinary research, of course, again, it's a challenge. I think it's wonderful conceptually. Everybody buys into it. Everybody knows we need to do more multidisciplinary research. But how do we incentivize it? How do we enable that kind of research? And lastly, maybe just a call for potential collaboration here. So what am I doing going forward, where I see maybe opportunities? So speaking of access to data, so for the past 5 years or so, I have been working on creating this really large database. Part of it is coming from Bureau van Dijk's Orbis database of international moves of companies around the world. And we have been really busy sort of merging the data and combining the data with some country level indicators and performance variables as well. And so that's where we already have one paper that's right now under review that is based on it, but I sort of see this as a platform for quite a few new quantitative studies, particularly for me interested, again, this spatial aspect. So we have close to 200,000 observations over the past 5 years, how companies go abroad. And what I like at it, and what I like about it, and what maybe would be interesting to you as mainly entrepreneurial scholars, is that it's both public-private companies, and it's moves that have been sort of investigated before the typical acquisitions and joint ventures, but these moves are also smaller moves. So things like establishing a sales office, establishing a distribution center, recycling center, and so that's where I really want to kind of get my teeth into and look at the data. So the role of relocation, international business development is also intriguing to me. We just started a new master's degree in global business development, which really cuts sort of again across the international business and entrepreneurship field, recognizing that any company, regardless of where it is, regardless of the size, regardless of the industry, needs to continuously look for international opportunities to grow, to simply grow, to gain new business, right? And so this master's degree has been designed to give our students the skills to do that, to be entrepreneurial on one side, but also being able to pursue, assess, and form relationships and so on and so forth. But I think there's also side on the research side. So I just started the research that with the cutting across discipline with a former student of mine who is now top data scientist in one of the San Diego companies, and she just came back and said, hey, can we do something together? And so we are planning to take scrape the job search engines data and really look at some of the key patterns in terms of what jobs in business development are where do we send and have some predictive analytics, where do we expect the next jobs to be, what specific skills should people have in those jobs, and so those should not only interesting academically, it should also inform our curriculum. So what can we learn about it? Do we need to update our curriculum so that to give the proper opportunities, and then also recruiting wise, right? Where should we have our students? And the last one, you remember the IE Scholars, the online community. So again, this is a community that we have 800 scholars from around the world, and we have from 70 different countries. But interestingly, we have very. I'm looking for somebody from the Middle East, so I'm looking to you. If there's anyone here interested in the international aspect of entrepreneurship, we are, so the role of the ambassadors essentially is to keep an eye for both academic but also practitioner type of events that may here in Saudi Arabia or Middle East. Also keep an eye on maybe some key research publications, which we then obviously promote to the global community. And just now we are also starting some new initiatives here where we are going to be featuring international entrepreneurs from different countries with the idea to, again, obviously keep an eye on new trends, but also potentially as a source of data, kind of looking at patterns. And we'll be also featuring scholars as well. And so again, ambassadors typically active role here as well. And that is for me. Thank you so much for your attention. I was hoping it would be more of a dialogue, but you're a very nice audience. So any questions or any thoughts? I would be very interested to hear how you might be dealing with some of these challenges of research, creating research that's relevant, that's not just academically elegant.